Now, it probably needs to be said that there are a bunch of other brushes, or tools rather, in this list that could be useful, but I've showed you the main ones. If you'd like to try playing with the rest of them, absolutely can. Uh, I'm going to move on for now, though. Those ones are kind of a little less important in my mind. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look now at this topology, right? So I mentioned before that we had this mesh that was maybe not working quite so well for things like the mouth, right? When I tried to use the crease tool on it before, it was ending up looking a little bit ugly. But we can actually fix that, okay? So one of the easiest ways is we can go to this topology menu here, and you see we have some options for remeshing our model. So for example, we could go ahead and use a voxel remesh with quads just by ticking this option here. And this is a really powerful feature. What this has done is it's applied a new mesh to this entire model, and now these faces are all going in the correct direction, which means that if I try and use my crease tool now, it's going to have no problem whatsoever. It's going to look pretty good. Okay. So if you ever find that your model is starting to behave strangely, it's probably worthwhile just using that remesh option. You don't have to use it all the time, only when it seems necessary. There is, however, an option in here to turn on dynamic topology, right? So this is the option here. If we turn that on, this will automatically remesh every time you make a change. And you can see that happening here. It's also going to do it based on your level of detail. So if I zoom out, it's going to do less of remeshing, right? But if I zoom in nice and close and have a small brush, you can see it's subdividing the mesh in that area lots and lots of times and creating a really crisp result. I find that this option isn't always super useful for my uses, but some people really enjoy using that dynamic mesh. I'm just going to go ahead and remesh again. Here we go. And we'll carry on working on this one like this for now. There is also an option here for resolution. So you can subdivide your entire mesh anytime you like. And this is going to basically take every face and split it into 4 faces. So here we go. This is probably really good to show actually. I've tried to click subdivide again and it's giving me an error saying that I'm going to end up with 10 million or 15 million faces. And really that's probably getting a bit too high, considering this is all running in a browser using the computer's RAM resources and things. So I think we'll stick with resolution 2, but you can see that we can jump back and forward between these 2 different resolutions to get a little bit more detail at the higher resolution. Okay, cool. And then if you want to, you can also just delete the higher resolution. That's another option if you want to use it. All right, so that's remeshing. I think now I'm just going to have a little bit of a play and see if we can get this model looking pretty cool. So maybe we'll come in here and, adjust some things that look a bit strange. That nose bridge was super wide. I mean, we've got a little bit of a strange looking character in the first place, so no promises that we can get this looking cool, but let's have a little play and see what we can get. Maybe if I come into a side view, can give him a more interesting nose, maybe slightly upturned, and try and give him a bit more of a bridge to this nose. There we go. Maybe use the smooth tool to smooth that out a little bit. Another tool I haven't showed is this flatten tool. So we could try using that to create like a bit of a flat bridge to the nose. Maybe giving it a bit of a side like this. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We could use this crease tool, but hold Alt to invert the effect and create something like a crease like this, right? So holding Alt on the crease tool helps to create these ridged lines instead. You can use that in conjunction with flatten to create these sort of planes. Quite nice. Maybe I could use the inflate tool to just make it a little bit thicker at the tip of his nose. There we go, that's looking pretty interesting. Probably need some nostrils too, right? So let's go ahead and use the drag tool to pull out some shapes for those. You notice that I used a sort of a low angle there so that we can pull it away based on the camera. Pull this back like this, and then maybe hit that with some inflate. Getting the cheeks a bit too much there. That's pretty good. All right, I'm going to introduce a new concept now. We're going to use some masking because I want to get some nostrils going up, right? So to do masking, you can hold Control using any tool, and it will activate this masking tool, right? So masking, you can actually choose the tool in the list, but I usually just go with the holding Control option. So as you can see, as I try to start masking this area, I am getting some pretty strange results, and the reason for that is that once again, these faces are a little bit stretched, right? So it might be worthwhile remeshing my model. We'll do that. There we go. You can see these faces are a little bit more uniform in size now, and I can come through and start to hold Control and paint my mask. So I'm just going to paint the area that I believe the nostril should be in. Something like this would be pretty good, right? And then the way this is going to work is I'm going to hold Control, put my mouse out in this open area here, and just click once. And that's going to invert the mask. And so the way the masks work is anything that's this dark color is not going to be affected by whatever brush I'm using. So for example, if I use the crease tool, right, I could just like go over this area and start to make cuts in the pink part, but not in the dark part. That's not what I want to do. I'm going to undo that. Instead, I'm going to use the drag tool, this one here, come to a side view, something like this, with a really large brush size, so holding X and dragging to the right. And then I'm going to left click on this nostril area and just move it up and slightly back. You can see it's starting to poke through the sides of the nose, so maybe I can come through it, look at it from underneath now, and just start to move it back towards the center a little bit. Maybe a smaller brush might help for that. There we go. Getting something kind of like a nostril. I'm going to smooth that a little bit. And if I hold Control and left click out here again, I can now invert my mask and just hit this area at the bottom with a little bit of smooth as well. And finally, I think we'll go for the inflate tool. I'm going to get rid of my mask by holding Control and dragging in the open area. And then I'm just going to go through and use a little bit of inflate on everything. There we go. That's not a bad nose. So there we have it. This part's getting a bit lumpy, so maybe I'll just smooth that out a little bit. And if it's getting quite strange results, it's probably a good idea to use the remesh option. So we'll do that. Right, there we go. That's looking much better. So I can smooth through there now. And maybe I'll just use the drag tool to adjust the shape through this part here. Not too bad. Yeah. Just using a little bit of flatten to create that bridge between the two nostrils. I think that looks all right.
I'll be honest, I could probably keep working on this model for hours before I was happy with what it looks like. But there is one more thing I'll do to this before we call it done today. Um, I'm going to come over to this tool and we'll change to the drag tool. And I'm just going to go ahead and create some ears for this model. So if I just click here and start to pull out, you can see I don't really get the kind of shape I'm after. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and mask this area in the shape of an ear, something like this, right? And we'll use this shape just the same way we did with the nostrils to pull out the shape of an ear. Okay, so we've got this shape masked, just looking at it from both sides. By the way, if you want to remove parts of your mask, you can hold Alt while you also hold Control. This allows you to paint out areas of the mask. Okay, let's use something like that. I'm not sure if this is the right size for an ear. It's roughly in the right position, but we're just going to use it anyway. So once again, I'm going to hold Control and just left click once out in this open area to invert my mask. And now with my drag tool, I'll use a really large brush size, something like this. And I kind of want to pull it out, right? But not, I don't want it to be directly out. If I just go like this, it's going to look crazy. Right. So, and I don't want to pull it this way either because, I mean, that's kind of more or less what I'm after, but it's kind of, it's all about finding the right angle, right? So we can try something like this. It doesn't look too bad. Or we could try from a lower angle, something like this. That way we can pull it out a little bit and also pull it backwards. I think that looks pretty good. Okay. So we've got something like an ear. Maybe we want it to be a bit taller up here, so I can pull just that part up. I could give it an earlobe by pulling this part down a little. And yeah, this is more or less the sort of shape that I'm after. I'm going to pull this part back forward a little bit. All right, we're getting this weird stretching stuff happening, and I've already said a little bit about that. So obviously that's to do with these faces being stretched. I'm not going to worry too much about that for now. What I'll do instead is I'm going to use the inflate brush to just make it a little bit thicker, right? So we're just giving it a little bit of a bulge so it's not this paper thin edge. Cool, so looking at it from different angles, making sure all parts of this have been hit with a little bit of inflate. And what I'm aiming for here is I'm not too worried about this weird stretching stuff. That's okay, I'm going to be smoothing this soon anyway. But I am aiming for the sort of mass that I'd like to be getting, right? Now you can see this ear is getting way too big, but I've got a way to deal with that soon too. Okay, so we're gonna go with something like this. I'm gonna hold Control and drag to deselect the mask or get rid of the mask. And then once again under topology, we're going to look for the voxel remeshing quads and just click remesh. And we'll give it a moment, and there we go. It's remeshed. This has given us a bit of a lumpy result, but if I just hit this a few times with the smooth tool, maybe hold shift and just hit it a few times with the smooth tool, we're going to just hit it a couple of times first, and then we'll do another remesh and hit it some more. So sometimes you do have to use the remesh multiple times on these shapes that have been pulled out and stretched quite a lot, but eventually you should end up with something pretty good. Okay, so we've got a few pieces in here that are looking a bit strange. Just smooth it out some more. We could maybe use a little bit of inflate. Just bumping this part here, closing these gaps a little. And let's hit it one more remesh. And I think that is pretty much what we're after for this ear shape. All right. So that's the process we can use to create things like this. Now, I said that the ear was getting a bit big. I'm going to use a specific tool to fix that. I'm going to go to the local scale tool, and I'll make my brush really big. I'll come to a side view like this. I can select my ear inside this brush area, and I can drag my mouse to the left, and you can see that's an easy way of changing that scale of that object. Okay, so we could do that for specific parts as well. Like if I wanted to make my nose a whole lot bigger, I can go and isolate that area inside the brush like this, right? Make the brush just the right size for it, and then I can click and I can go to the right, and that'll make it bigger. So lots of really cool ways to use these tools. If I want to make these eyes smaller, for example, make it the right size, make the brush just cover the eye, and then I'm going to go to the left. Right, very good. Let's move that eye down a little bit as well. Cool, so let's just finish up this ear. I'm going to use the drag tool to slightly alter the shape. And we can use the crease tool to start layering in some shapes inside of there. Maybe we'll use a little bit of a larger brush this time. Okay, so do some creasing like this. Obviously, it pays to look at some reference of ears if you wanted to get it to look good. For example, we might have like an ear hole, and if I wanted to get something specific for that, I could use masking once again, use the drag tool, and just push that in like that. Something like that. Not too bad. It's not quite in the right position, but it's okay. We can always move things around afterwards with the drag tool. Okay, so let's deselect that mask and just start to smooth this out a little. And we might just remesh it as well. There we go. That's looking much better. Maybe a little bit of inflate. By the way, all of these tools in here have hotkeys as well. So for the inflate tool, I think we push numpad 2 or even just regular 2. And you can get quite quick at changing between tools if you sort of memorize some of these hotkeys. Like if I want to use the drag tool, I can push 8 on the keyboard. And I mean, it's it's not amazing looking in terms of an ear, but it's getting there. We can push numpad 7 to get the crease tool and start to create some shapes coming back in this other direction. Maybe use the inflate brush a little, which was numpad 2. Yeah. And that's actually looking, fairly good. Don't forget, we do also have just the good old-fashioned brush tool. If you wanted to dig out some shapes in here, I could just hold Alt and just carve things away. So that's pretty decent as well. Now, I'm going to call this done for now. This is, you know, I could, as I said, work on this for hours, but I'm not going to. I'm going to call this one good enough for today. We can save this and we can always come back to it. And now this is probably something I should have mentioned earlier. One of the downsides of SculptGL is that as it is browser-based, at any point, if my internet browser crashes or I refresh the page, I actually lose everything. So it's probably a good idea to get into the habit of saving it very often. It's easy to do. You can go to Files, Import/Export, and you can just come down to save.sgl. And what this is going to do, it's going to just download the file in a .sgl format. You can put that in your downloads folder, and I'm just going to call that my name, and I'll say head underscore version 1. I like to incrementally save, so I've got multiple versions I can come back to if something crashes. All right, so here we go. That's downloaded now. There's also an option in here to save it as an STL file. And these STL files are actually files we can slice for 3D printing, which is really cool. So there's some other videos I have on this channel which you can take a look at, which will show you how to get those 3D models sliced for 3D printing as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today. I thank you for joining me, and I hope you learned something. I look forward to seeing you in at the Ohan Makerspace sometime soon, and hopefully we can get something 3D printed together. Cheers. Bye.